Hello and welcome to a conversation on corporate social responsibility toward military families, hosted by the National Military Family Association. I'm Jacey Eckhart. I am a military sociologist, a longtime journalist, and a transition coach who works with people going through a major life change. I'm also an Air Force brat. I am an active duty Navy wife, and I'm now an Army mom. And that's the funnest part so far. One of the things that I know really well about military families is our infinite capacity to learn how to handle change, big change, huge change, monumental change that would get to every other person out there, but we learn how to handle it. And that's why I'm so happy to bring to you today some major change agents in our community. I'd first like to start with Ashish Vazirani. He's the CEO and Executive Director of National Military Family Association. He was a former Navy submarine officer. He is very strongly supporting high quality childcare, which is always a big one for us in the military families, and also right now very concerned about food insecurity among military families, which we're hearing more about. Ash, before we get started, I wanted to ask you, NMFA is such a powerhouse among VSOs. I'm wondering which of your corporate values, your organization's values, which of those are most motivating to you personally?
Well, Jacey, thanks for the kind introduction, and thanks for facilitating the conversation today. One of the things that attracted me to the National Military Family Association, and it was just a blessing that the organization reached out to me to join and to be part of what we're doing. But when we think about our values and our mission, one of the things that drew me to the organization, I think that we hold dear, is one is we're family focused, right? That's the intent of our organization as a military service organization. Our focus is on the military family and the family unit, and not necessarily the focus on the service member or the veteran. We're really focused on those people who stand beside and behind the service members, who enable them to go out and serve and focus on the mission. And so that's I'd say that's one thing. And then the other thing is we're really focused on being bold. We know that it's important to speak for these families in a bold and clear manner, because what these families are, they are strong and they are resilient. And oftentimes when there's a need, they won't necessarily ask. And someone needs to speak up.
We are prideful. We do tend to be prideful in the best way. So I'm delighted to be here today, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from you on this topic. Our next guest is James Schenck. He is the president and CEO of PenFed Credit Union, and which is really important to all of us. But more importantly on this subject, he's the CEO of PenFed Foundation, and they've raised more than $40 million for military families. And you are also a part of a military family, aren't you?
I am. My father served in the Marines, and I'm very proud of that. My stepson graduated Annapolis last year. Now he's a nuclear submariner as well.
Excellent. It's good to have the Schencks on the water, finally. That's a good place for you to be. When it comes to your corporation, how you think of this as a person, what are the values that matter most to you in this setting?
In this setting, for me and our 2,700 employees, we built an organization around kindness and respect, around integrity, and around service. And we like to think we're innovative, but I do say if we think we're innovative within our four walls, we're going to fail miserably. So we include a lot of partners in that innovation. But it really is creating a corporate climate very similar to the military values, where one another within the foxhole together look out for each other and lift each other up and want to help the communities in which we serve. And the ecosystem within the military community truly understands that from the day somebody serves to the day they retire.
And beyond that often. We'll be getting back to talk to you more about being innovative, because I think that's one of the important things to talk about right now. We'll move to our next guest. I'm so glad you could be here. Our next guest is Jason Pock. He is the director of the Mid-Atlantic region and veteran outreach for Boeing. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you, Jacey. Thank you for having me.
Now, you two are you are an Army veteran, and you are also the son of an Army veteran.
I am. I came from a military family, not just my father being in the service, but my uncles as well. And, just having that military foundation from a very early age and, moving and all of the frequent moves that we've had to go through, from a personal standpoint, truly understand what our families go through. So happy to bring that type of perspective and insight into my role today at Boeing, and really excited to discuss further, how Boeing is supporting our military service members, veterans, and their families. So thank you for having me.
Excellent. I'm so glad that you could be here. The one thing I forgot to say is we are all parts of military families. Ash, you too have your father was a Marine and your son is also a serving Marine.
Correct. Yeah. So as we say, and I think it's for James and Jason, right? Service is the family business.
And I think that having both been brought up in a military family like we all were, and then serving, and then some of us making a military family ourselves, we definitely know what the support of the military family looks like, where that value lies. So during a time of such change, even though military families are good at it, Ash, what do you find are the most concerning issues happening to military families this year?
And JC, I think, when we look at this year, or even when we look over the past 20 years, right? 20 years of continuous war, it's unprecedented, right? The operational tempo of today's military is unprecedented. The use of the Guard and the Reserve in sustained and continuous use is unprecedented. And then you layer on top of that a pandemic, right? So military families, families who shoulder a disproportionate burden, right, for protecting our freedoms, are being called on to do more. And that's whether they're frontline responders in the response to the pandemic, but also when we're looking at an environment where employment has been affected, right? These families are carrying a disproportionate amount of that burden. And so you have military spouses, military partners who are managing the home front while their service member is deployed or on extended training. They're trying to educate their children.
Where the home front got even bigger.
That's exactly right. And so,
right.
So the level of stress on military families has just been increased exponentially. And that's really that's the thing that we're focused on, is how do we help those families address that stress?
Yes. James, one of the biggest concerns for military families right now seems to be finances. In a recent study, 6 out of 10 military families said that they expected to be extremely or very financially affected by COVID-19. And people think this is because 34% of military spouses have lost work or lost hours during this time. What are you seeing with that with PenFed?
I'll just talk through the PenFed Foundation. What we saw in the March-April timeframe, we were one of the first veteran support organizations to offer a COVID-19 relief program. Within 48 hours, we had 4,000 service members apply for grants. We were fortunate, we were able to partner with AER, the Gary Sinise Foundation, and others, and raise several $1 million relatively quickly to put aid into their hands. But we're also seeing the stress at home. People forget sometimes that if you have 2 or 3 kids, you might not have 2 or 3 notebook computers. And any corporate partner on the phone today, we just donated 500 of computers from PenFed that, through a normal cycle where about every 3 years we replenish them with new computers. But a 3-year-old computer is still very good. So we're able to, clean them, put good software, get the licensing for them, but then donate 500 computers. That's just a small dent into the need across the military community, because if you got 3 kids, 4 kids, you might only have access, if you're a junior enlisted, to 1 computer. It's very stressful for that family in this remote learning world. So just put that out there. But we see, as Ash was saying, a huge demand for financial help right now. the Reserve, and the National Guard. They've been deployed. Extended deployments have made it very hard on families. All those things coupled together, the lost jobs of some of the spouses, our community needs help.
That's the kind of help everybody needs. You need a computer. So, you know, when you got your knee in the back of one kid, you at least need to have the other kid actually paying attention to the teacher. All right, Jason, when it comes to what Boeing is seeing, you are not only supporters of the military family, but you are huge employers of veterans. Right now, the veteran unemployment rate, which was 3.6%, has more than doubled. And for young enlisted and for some people of color, it's even higher than that. What are you seeing at Boeing?
Yeah, so at Boeing, you know, the priority is absolutely to support our military veterans and their families. And I do want to emphasize very huge on the family component. Every time I'm speaking at a forum, every time I'm telling the Boeing story of what we are doing for the military community is inclusive of families. So when you look at what our primary focus is and where we want to make an impact and drive outcomes for not just the service members, transitioning service members and their families, it's first to the component of career readiness, employment, workforce transition, investing in and aligning with those right organizations, the right military service organizations, veteran service partners, the NMFAs of the world, to make sure that we are there and supporting them. Second is the rehabilitation recovery aspect, supporting the wounded, injured, and ill population. And you know, that is an area where, you know, our company, quite frankly, has put a stake in the ground and said we want to make a difference in impacting the lives of not just that are physically wounded, but also those that carry the invisible wounds of war as well. And definitely inclusive of families as well. So a lot of these organizations that are coming up with creative, innovative ideas to make a difference in the lives of those that are trying to get back up on their feet, we are behind. And the last component, Boeing is a very large company. You know, we've supported the military community over 100 years through our products and services. We're present in over 60 different countries globally. We have a tremendous footprint in major markets across the United States, and it only makes sense for us to be behind our military service members and their families and everything that they do. So it's our duty, it's our passion, it's inherent in who we are. You know, we have over 20,000 plus military veterans within our ranks. And, you know, this work is not going to cease. I know we talked about how during this time, the op tempo is unprecedented. We are layering that on top with the pandemic. But I assure you, our company stays behind, stays committed to this, this group, and it will be in it. We are in it for the long run. And so I am just really fortunate and very honored to be able to be a part of the team that's helping drive that forward.
Thank you. One of the things that I'm glad that you brought up was how you partner with veteran service organizations, and you're looking for creative ways that people are getting together. I know that a lot of people are very concerned about corporate giving right now because clearly every institution has been affected, and that's going to affect budgets. How are you going to, and I know that Boeing and PenFed both see so many applicants from established organizations like NMFA and brand new organizations. How do you evaluate those requests for funding?
Yeah, Jacey, that's a really good question. And I'll share on the Boeing front, we take a very thorough process to make sure that we are conducting the proper due diligence. We are engaging our potential partners, and you know, we really are out there in the communities and sitting down with these partner organizations and mapping out what truly is in the long term going to maximize impact for military veterans and their families. It's very thorough. It's not your, hey, you know, and everybody probably knows this term, and excuse my candor in saying this, but philanthropy in general has gone beyond and continues to evolve just from writing a check and saying, we've done our good deed for the day, and you know, congratulations, we're gonna, you know, put our logo behind this effort and call it a day. It's far from that. It's very deliberate. It's really heavily geared at measurable outcomes, measuring impact, research-based. It's just a very thorough process that I think many people are starting to realize. And this is because we want to make sure that we are continuing to move the needle, right? And philanthropy has evolved in that there has to be a return on investment in the long run, right? We want to ensure that, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
So you're saying that in the past, where an emotional plea might have been enough, right now, it is a time where it is more head-based than heart-based, and you need to see that these dollars are making a genuine difference.
Absolutely. And when you talk about the discussion between quality versus quantity, right? A lot of, in the past, I would say partnerships are probably framed around how many people are we impacting, instead of losing a little bit of sight behind what are the qualitative aspects of the program. Is this truly making a difference from a career readiness employment front? Are these people being gainfully employed and having meaningful careers in the long run? Or are we just counting the fact that they've been serviced by a specific program and they're checking the box, right? So we're really looking at that long-term piece, and particularly in the recovery and rehab portion as well. You're seeing a lot of data, a lot of studies and research coming out about what is truly working, what is really going to impact the number of suicides and that number being lowered in the long run. We understand that there's a variety of different treatments and modalities that support somebody from ultimately making that decision of suicide. But it's something that we are really, really deliberately focused at looking at, and really getting behind those that are having proven impact in the long run.
The proven impact is very important, especially when we see complicated problems that are at, what they call wicked problems that have many layers and many solutions and many stakeholders. Now, James, at PenFed, are you seeing the same kind of things? Are you measuring which organizations you're going to partner with a little more carefully these days?
The different measuring, we sort of have three areas that I look for. First is policy direction, because when we talk about quality and quantity, the right organization, and I'll use MFA as the perfect example, the right policy approved by Congress at the right time can impact the entire force, whether it's military spouses, veterans with amputations, through their advocacy, and by changing laws or policies within DOD or on the Hill, it has huge reach. So when I'm putting dollars to work, we get the most leverage out of organizations like NMFA that can impact the entire force through their great brand, their reputation, and changing the laws. Second is sort of the health and welfare. Organizations like the Armed Services Arts Partnership, which takes service members with PTSD and uses the arts to get them into stand-up comedy. Adam Keyes, a triple amputee. It's got him out there, living life to the fullest. He's living by himself. He's pursuing a passion of being a stand-up comic across the country. So morale and welfare type firms, and then financial education. So those are sort of the three pillars or priorities that I look for. But again, as Jason was saying, the due diligence that goes into it, looking at Charity Navigator, looking at the rating, brand absolutely matters. You never want to be a corporate a funder or provide philanthropy to an organization that's misusing the dollars. Unfortunately, there's over 40,000 organizations that support veteran causes. Not all have the veterans' interest in heart and mind. I think we've seen over the news over the last decade. And so we try to do the due diligence process, but to make sure it aligns with those three sort of priorities of giving.
So you'd be able to see that. Now, Ash, I know that you have been in the VSO world for a long time. Have you changed anything about the way you work with your corporate partners?
Yeah, so Jacey, I came to I grew up around the veteran space because my dad was a disabled vet and had his own foundation. So I grew up around it, but I spent the bulk of my professional career as a management consultant helping commercial organizations improve their effectiveness. And so what I was able to do was about 10 years ago, bring that experience to bear working with some military and veteran service organizations and addressing some of the issues that James and Jason have mentioned, which which are about making sure that the programs are communicated and delivered in an evidence-based way, right? That we're showing real impact. And I think that's one of the things that I've tried to bring to the organizations that I've worked with and what we're doing at NMFA is really to bring more of that, I'll call it, science into the art of supporting military families. And so, I'm married to a public health professional, public health researcher. And so, I had to get pretty smart in understanding things like logic models and theories of change and those sorts of things. And that's what the donors, sophisticated donors, expect that today, right? It's everyone has a good story, right? Everyone has things that can tug at the heartstrings, but you have to differentiate between showing real impact and an impact that is sustainable, right? I think that's one of the things that we appreciate about partners like PenFed and Boeing is one is they drive us to do that, but they also open up their community to us so that we can learn from their other partners, right? So we can start sharing some of those best practices and engaging together. I think the other thing that I'd say that service organizations are doing more of and we're certainly trying to do this as I'll take it, a page from the book that I used to think about when I was advising healthcare companies or technology companies is that no individual organization has a complete solution. So we need to look for partners, whether it's corporate partners, foundation partners, other service organizations, in creating a more complete solution. Because I think if any of us try and develop our own complete solution, we don't have the resources and we'll probably be pretty thin. So we have our areas of expertise in our lanes and understanding what those lanes are and then working together in a collaborative manner. So it's those things. So getting to more impact, an evidence-based impact, and then driving a greater level of collaboration.
Now, when you speak about collaboration, there's quite a lot of research that says when it comes to trying to help veterans and help military families, having a multiple groups help them at different levels is the most effective thing. Otherwise, everybody ends up with a backpack, whether you need a backpack or not. 14 backpacks aren't going to help. Right. So we talk about having these VSOs pair together, group together. James, are you seeing that as a trend of VSOs pairing and partnering when it comes to PenFed?
Much more in the last 5 years than, say, 15 or 20 years ago. In the past, it seemed like a lot of the nonprofits didn't want to work together. It was like they felt it was a limited pie, that if I help you, it's going to be less for my organization.
Scarcity.
And I'll just use Adam Keyes as an example. So Adam Keyes is a triple amputee, over 130 surgeries, 5 years in the hospital. The Gary Sinise Foundation built him a house. They provided him a smart home. Armed Stars' art partnership helped him with that career transition and meeting that quality of life he was looking for to be a stand-up comic. QL Plus, another organization, helped do some custom engineering on his wheelchair and at his house to make his life more maneuverable and easier for him. The PenFed Foundation was able to support him through some of his initiatives. So it was several organizations. And then what I also like to say is it's really nice when an organization pairs with their beneficiaries for a long period of time. It's not just a give and forget. We've been having quarterly lunches with Adam for years since we honored him and his mother at our gala a few years ago. We're always listening for where there's a need, or he might be like you say, he doesn't need another backpack, but he's getting ready to move to the West Coast. Okay, here's where we can put him in touch with that can help him with that transition, things like that. So I do see a real trend, us working with Hiring Our Heroes and sharing best practices, working with the USO and others. There's been a lot more collaboration, I think, at the top and through all levels, that we're all there to make the service members and families' lives better. How do we do it in collaboration, and we can grow the pie for everybody?
It almost sounds like part of your role as a partner is being part of the network, being an active part of the network, so that when you hear of a need and your organization doesn't do it, you might know who does.
Absolutely. The PenFed Foundation, if we can't meet a specific need, again, most foundations have very specific criteria in which they give for. And so, we make exceptions where it makes sense, but there's things that are just different than what we're offering, what that service members needs. We don't provide sort of a respite care, but, Boulder Creek in Serving Our Willing Warriors does. They have facilities, cabins, they can get out with their family members. So we'll refer them if they're looking for several days away from Walter Reed, or, they need that downtime with their family members. We put them in touch with the right other nonprofits that can meet that specific need.
Okay, thank you. Jason, what about collaborations are you seeing at Boeing that are impressive to you?
Yeah, Jacey, thanks for that. And everything that I just heard with James and Ashish in terms of the collaborative approach, I do think that is one of my primary roles in what I'm doing today at Boeing is really to drive that collaboration, as Ashish said, for a complete solution. And so when we look at our myriad number of partnerships across the entire country and globally as well, having that multi-layered approach is absolutely critical. We understand that there are many organizations that do phenomenal work at the local level, in the local communities, in the regional level, and also at the very large scale level, the big sixes of the world, right? And so when we talk about ensuring that, what is a good solution for us, or what is a viable partnership look like, it is those programs and opportunities that say, hey, we are taking a very that multi-layered approach of connecting with these local communities, having these community-based organizations connect with some of the larger groups, and come up with a grand plan to collaborate. It's not just, and I think I heard this earlier, I think James said this, it's not one organization that can do everything, right? It's really taking that, having that collaborative mindset. And I know that's a buzzword in the space, and but that is what we all strive to do. We're all in this to support, and in our one mission to support the military veterans and their families, right? It's not a competition. We're all in it to make sure that we could have some meaningful progress going forward, and really support this community and make sure that they become thriving members of society after they transition.
I think that we have some people in our audience today who are professionals also in this field. So when we think of people in the VSO space, VSO professionals, how do you think they can, because we're human beings, we all have scarcity mentality, right? We all have our little jealousies and our feelings. How do you get over that in the real world, right? Because I mean, I believe in military families, and I still have my feelings. How do you personally get over that kind of thing professionally? Yeah. What do you tell yourself?
Jacey, if I could offer a couple things. One is, I think that, and it goes back to what James and Jason were also saying, is that when we look for those kinds of collaborations, we really focus on, is there alignment of values and is there alignment of mission? And that has to be the primary way to evaluate even whether or not you can enter in or even have a discussion about a way to collaborate or partner. So that's the first
You're looking
filter.
For like-minded people.
Like-minded people, and I think part of that is when you understand that you have that like-minded and service-oriented approach. The objective is to actually get to impact and a solution, and then find ways to get there. And to James's point, then it doesn't mean that there's a scarcity, right? Because you can actually, you can create a lift. And that's where
the two organizations together are bigger than they are individually.
Yeah, but I think that doesn't mean, but you have to be you have to be careful about that. You have to be focused. You can't get outside your lane. And so you have to find the right level of overlap, right? There has to be mission connection, right? Before you do that. And I think where some organizations will get out is they'll really fall into a completely different area. They're chasing the dollar as opposed to addressing the mission.
So professionally, you try to keep very focused on the mission, and you look for partners who are equally focused on the mission.
Correct.
Okay. James, what do you see on that? What's some professional advice you could give?
So it's very similar. So for us, we fight to combat payday lending. There's over 44,000 payday lenders that prey upon our military community outside our military bases. And we also try to help first-time home buyers, providing up to a $5,000 grant to help them with their initial down payments and closing costs. But we can partner with organizations like NMFA to help with the Military Lending Act or the raise awareness on Capitol Hill of some of these predatory lending practices that are occurring by non-regulated financial institutions that really create a real problem for these service members and their families. So those are the ways we focus together. But again, it's aligning the mission and aligning mission, and then aligning others who are in a better position to help maybe leverage or promote that that piece of the puzzle. So it's really, trying to figure out where you're trying to get and then aligning the partners. Just like in business, when you align your different business partners to get from A to B, what is it going to take to help combat payday lending at Fort Bragg? Well, first there's policy initiatives. There's other things that can be brought to that problem, and we try to surround ourselves with other organizations that can help us get there.
Excellent. Now, I know that there are some benefits to a business when they are involved with VSOs. Jason, what does Boeing see a business benefit of this kind of giving?
Absolutely huge business benefit, right? Ultimately, when we look at supporting in the military, veteran, and family community, as I'd mentioned earlier, one of the primary focus areas within our veteran and family strategy is the workforce transition component, is investing in those high quality training and skill development programs with the end state goal of, quite simply, building better lives for veterans, family members, and their families. And so when you talk about Boeing and NMFA's partnership, it's really honed in and focused on the license and certification piece. It's honed in on the advocacy piece. It's building about awareness that, right now unemployment is extremely high. Comparative, it's just, to me, it's astounding to hear. And so when we get behind these types of root issues that we can make a difference in, ultimately the goal is to get as many military veterans and families into our Boeing talent pipeline as much as possible, because we understand the value that those individuals bring to a company like Boeing.
So a business benefit is really accessing that pool of talent.
Absolutely.
That these are the kind of people you want working for you. James, I'd like you to tell me about one thing your organization has done for military families this year that you personally are most proud of.
We've kept our commitment to all 80 of the nonprofits we support, even with COVID-19. There are so many organizations that have unfortunately either pivoted to a different cause away from the military and family members. It might have been because they had different needs within their community. But I'm most proud that across our major centers in San Antonio, Oregon, and Omaha, Nebraska, here in DC Metro, we stayed truly focused that service members and their families need us on rainy days, not just on sunny days. So my commitment in March is we would honor every budgeted commitment we made to every nonprofit. So I think that's what I'm most proud of, is that we were there even when times were tough, not to step backwards, but to make sure they knew our commitment was there and they can count on it.
And that you were their reliable partner. That's really necessary. Jason, what about you? What do you think Boeing is most proud of having done this year?
I will say is continuing the most critical work where we actually first went on this journey, as a function, as Boeing Global Engagement. We really and this was not this year, but a couple years back, really re-looked at our philanthropic priorities and our community engagement work. And before then, Boeing's support for military veterans and families was ongoing, but it wasn't an upfront, our heroes is a primary pillar of what we're going to do. And a lot of great work was still happening, but it wasn't a out-front, make sure that the community, our customers, the world knows that this is happening. And so what we did is took that deliberate approach, really re-emphasized, went through an entire rebranding strategy to make sure that our heroes pillar is one of the three primary pillars of what we are going to do and how we want to be known as a company out in the community. So establishing that pillar and really carrying on that work forward, in the workforce transition space, and supporting our wounded, injured, and ill in the health and well-being space, and really deploying our own employees out into the communities to be aligned with organizations like NMFA and have, very creative volunteer engagement opportunities to get out there to know that Boeing stands behind this community. We always will for the long run. So it's really carrying that work forward. Again, this work is not short-lived. It's not it's not lip service. And that is what I'm really most proud of, is that across the board, across the enterprise, across all the functions, our employees are bought in. We have again, as I mentioned earlier, a tremendous number of veterans in our ranks. We're going through tracking the number of spouses and really digging into the demographics and the numbers to really continue that work and amplify that work and continue to tell our story in the community that this is going to be permanent for us. I really do believe that supporting this community, supporting the veterans, supporting the families is inherently a part of who we are, what we do, and what we'll always be doing in the future to come.
The volunteer work of your employees is so appreciated. James, I know PenFed also has volunteer opportunities for its employees. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, we think it's important, not just for the dollars that any corporation gives to the organizations within the community to support. It's getting the employees behind it. We actually have employee committees who actually choose our nonprofits that we give to. We want them to be part of it, but it's not only the cash, it's that sweat equity. We see such team building opportunities, working with different organizations, building houses for veterans. We do a lot with DC Habitat for Humanity. We'll build a house. In the last 3 years, it's gone to a veteran, as usually unfortunately, a single mom with 1 or 2 kids, but it changes that life, a safe home. There's sweat equity in it. The teamwork between our IT department, our marketing department, and others is some of the most fun I've had in the last 20 years, is when you're in the communities at different nonprofits, when the employees roll up our sleeves together. And again, it's completely voluntary. We've done some events out in Omaha. We just refurbished 60 apartments for homeless veterans. And that makes not only me feel good as a CEO here in the DC metro area, but those 500 employees in Omaha and the ones who showed up, or the food drives at the branches, or donating clothes for homeless veterans and others, people cleaning out their closets. I think we've had several huge U-Haul trucks of clothes that were donated at going into the cold Omaha winter coming up. So things like that, where the corporations can get their employees involved. People are looking to do things to make a difference in the lives of others. When you're kind, respectful, and you lift others up, our employees sleep well. And so I'm very proud of that.
Jacey, could I?
Excellent. I want to ask both of you about the projects you both, James, you had mentioned innovation as one of the things that you care about. And Jason, you had mentioned creative as one of the things you're really interested in. I want both of you to think, what is a project that you're not doing now that you'd love to do? This is one of our questions from the audience. What is one project that you kind of have had an interest in? And while you think, I'm going to talk to Ash, okay? Because now that I've got you on the spot, because I really want you to think about, okay, a project I really want to do is, okay, Ash, you were going to say in a second ago.
I just want to, one of the things that James and Jason were talking about is the engagement of the teams, the employees of their organizations. And I think that's a critical part as we think about creating more complete solutions. Sometimes part of that complete solution is just not funding. It's actually access to the talent that exists within our partner organizations. And give you a couple of examples of that. As we think about a more complete military spouse scholarship and employment program, one of the things that we're tapping into is the skills and expertise of our partner organizations who are now providing mentors, right, to the military spouse scholars that we're engaging, right? So it's more than just the check that they're getting. They're getting expertise. Another specific example is, is Boeing and the Boeing team. So Jason mentioned the work that we do with them on licensure and certification. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to create grassroots level advocates, military spouses who are going out and advocating locally to get these compacts in place so that their licenses and certifications will be transferable when they move. And one of the benefits is that the government relations team at Boeing is helping to enable that program, right? They're providing their expertise into that program, helping us create the content. And so that's critical. We certainly need their financial backing, right? We can't operate without their financial backing. But it's not just treasure, it's also talent, right? It's also time. And that's when you know you have a true strategic partnership, right? When you engage at that level, and that's what's particularly important.
Because it gets to be more than money, it's a brain trust.
That's right. And you develop the relationship not just with the corporate giving group, but it's with the employees, and there's that groundswell of support.
Okay, thank you, Ash. All right, Jason, you look pensive, so I'm going to go to James, who looks ready. James, I want to hear about a creative project you want to do that you aren't doing presently.
All right, you got me energized. One, I love your personality. I love your energy. So here's my, here's what I want to deliver next year. I want to deliver a family finance night across the nation that touches 1 million families, okay, in the military community, across all services, bringing together Navy Federal Credit Union, USAA, JP Morgan Chase. The problem we have in society is most individuals learn finance and economics from their moms and dads. Unfortunately, a lot of moms and dads are very busy, and let's just say not all moms and dads are good stewards of resourcing. And so I would love to teach 1 million families the importance of understanding that in life, you're going to have unlimited wants, there's scarce resources, and you have to make choices. And for every choice, there's an opportunity cost. If I can partner with Boeing and some big corporations, get $1 million of prizes, but to set out on a national goal, Stuart Varney, be on all the major networks, to talk about the importance of financial education starts with the family and reach 1 million military families and help them do better financially. That'd be my big, hairy, audacious goal next year.
All right, big, hairy, audacious goal. I'm going with that. Okay, and I know, Ash, you are going to love talking to all the people who want to be part of that opportunity. So I'm going to have them send their comments to you.
We're on board, James. So whenever you're ready to go on that, we're
excellent.
Yeah.
You know, Ash loves the word million. It's his favorite word. All right, James, let's hear about what your creative thought is. Who would you like to work with on that?
Back to me. I want to work with all. I'll say
I'm sorry. Well, we can always go back to you because you know.
I thought you meant Jason.
Got a second creative idea. I'm up for it.
Nope, that was it. It's going to take some time planning, but with the right partners, my mom always says, many hands make the load light. So I'm going to bring the right partners with me.
And that is fantastic. Okay, Jason, it is now your turn.
Okay.
I see that you are ready.
I'm on the spot.
All right, have you thought of something creative that you'd like to do?
Yeah, you know what? I think instead of it being a specific project from my end, I really want to address and speak to something. When we look into the next year, it is the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And, you know, I know that 9/11 has had a tremendous impact to so many military families, military service members, our entire country, first responders. I mean, list goes on. And you know, what I would want to do is come up with a creative project that addresses across the board the notion that we always hear when we're talking about bridging the military civilian divide, right? When we talk about how less than 1% of our country serve, when we look at what is really plaguing media coverage. Every time a veterans related issue is talked about, it's usually about mental health. It's about some trip up at the VA, and I love the VA. I get my healthcare done there. I think it's top notch, but it's always been negative, right? And we've talked a lot on this call today about such the impactful programs that you all are executing at MFA, myriad number of creative, innovative collaboration and ideas that we've exchanged and talked about. I really want to do something that really changes that narrative. And it won't be a one-year initiative. I'm sure it's going to be 5 to 10 years, 15, 20, if that, right? To really change that narrative of, our service members being tremendous value to the fabric of this country. Our wounded, injured, and ill service members and their families go through tremendous adversity, but they overcome them. This narrative of, life is not over when you sustain severe injuries, when you, are coping with, mental health and PTSD and PTS, the help is out there. This is a collaborative effort as a country. And, whatever that project may be, again, I think I'm rambling a little bit, but it's really to change that narrative, to talk about post-traumatic growth, to talk about the good that, even from a personal perspective, I've went through the Walter Reed process. I became a double amputee by stepping on a 10-pound pressure plate IED in Afghanistan, but I would have never guessed in a million years that I would be where I'm at and helping drive the impact that we want to have in the community, in the world. And so
I think you're talking, Jason, about, we talk about financial initiatives, we talk about food scarcity. You're talking about culture.
yes.
You're talking about, and James had talked about the comedian. You're talking about arts and how we think about people and how they function in the world. And that's a different kind of opening. So one of my questions for you is, if you are a person who is new to the corporate giving world, you aren't an NMFA, you're not an established practice, what's the best way to get your foot in the door with this kind of thing? What's step one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we all bring, everybody that has spoken today, brings a perspective of coming from a military family, having been military veterans ourselves, but that is not the answer, or that is not the end all be all. It doesn't have to be all comprised of individuals that have been in the space for a while. If you want to get yourself in the door, I say get involved. And that's what I tell our employees all the time. I know James talked about some of the employee engagement activities and volunteer activities that he has offered in his organization. And at Boeing is very similar. We really lean on our Boeing veteran engagement team, our business resource group teammates, that we have 33 chapters across the entire globe, presence in Australia and the UK, and in many different, wherever we have a presence here domestically, we have a veteran engagement team that goes out into the community, that tells a story. And I do want to mention that that is not specific to military veterans. It is also inclusive of whether you have a friend that is serving. I mean, we are every time. I know I have opened up in many different forums just to say, if it's not a military-centric audience, how many people, aren't military families, but how many people are connected in any way, shape, or form? If you know a friend, if it's your neighbor, if it's somebody, right? Usually the entire room raises their hand. And so, I really do think that we need more outside external collaborative efforts, to really gain new perspective, to gain new ideas. When we look at, Boeing is not our strategic pillar is one of three. The other two are our education pillar. We are an aerospace and engineering company, so we are heavily focused on partnering with those STEM-related initiatives and amazing, phenomenal organizations that are moving the needle to really foster from early on, feeding the Boeing talent pipeline. So eventually, as they go through their educational journey, as from kids at a very early learning level, that when they do become adults, they want to seek out a job with a Boeing, and that is possible, right? And
if you know someone who has done the job, you are more likely to do that job themselves.
Certainly.
So one of the things I think that you're saying on this, that if you're a person with an idea and you'd like to start getting into this world, one of the things that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to network into that world, perhaps by participating in one of your volunteer initiatives at PenFed or through Boeing or through NMFA, my favorite. James, we've got a question from the audience for you. What can VSOs do better to support their corporate partners in order to ensure they're providing value? Because when we send our paperwork to you, we have no idea what you're saying.
I would say communicate. We partner with a new service dog organization this year. We raised 5 service dogs here at PenFed. One is called Vet Dogs. And at the 6-month point, we're raising ACE. I got this amazing report from their CEO giving me an update on ACE's progress with his task and his training and his learning. It's very important when corporations are giving, those organizations that you're giving to, keep that constant communication. This came in the form of a letter. It could be as simple as a phone call or an email.
No, yeah.
And to let us know what's working and what's not working. We like to say, let's crawl, walk, and run together. So we start out with, small amount of philanthropic aid. When the communication is good and the impact is good, you give more and you grow it. Crawl, walk, and run, and communicate. You can't communicate enough between the VSOs and the corporate donors about, and then it's important for the corporations. What I do, I share out Friday messages across to my 2,700 employees. And when I send out to my 2.1 million members, I'll be highlighting to my membership what PenFed is doing for these VSOs, because not everybody just gives to one organization. People give to many. So I want to spread the word about why PenFed is given. Here's these different organizations we're supporting, because out of these 2.1 million members, they're running companies, they're running small businesses, they're leading Fortune 100 companies. They too might see that need. So communicate, communicate, and communicate.
And I think also to see you as another partner in need. You have that Friday communication standing there every day that has to be, every Friday that has to be filled. If they've got something good that can go in that, help you out.
Absolutely.
Okay. Jason, I've got a question for you from the audience. Aside from more time and money, what are your biggest obstacles or barriers to achieving your objectives for military families, for Boeing? What kind of obstacles and barriers come in the way?
Well, if I may first really address how important the communication aspect that James just really highlighted before. It is so important and we see this as a partnership whenever, we have great things that are happening. And, most importantly, we want to help effectively tell their story and in turn tell our story of what we're doing out in the community. So just wanted to put that highlight point on that question.
You'd like to hear some good news too, in other words.
Absolutely. We love to. And it is something that is very important to us. And so, so in terms of barriers, wow, aside from time and money, I think we spent a lot of time on talking about collaboration. And, I will say, as much as we tout collaboration, I do think that sometimes could be a barrier for us as well, right? So when we have competing organizations that are doing a lot of the same things, but when we talk about differentiation, the great organizations are the ones that have already fostered those relationships, that have had proven impact, proven positive programming, and has come to the table and said, hey, we have done some tremendous work in conjunction with all these other partners, and let's continue to drive this forward. We are not the only organization that are doing this, but we are one amongst many. We are, going to do this, and this will be a partnership. This is not a transactional relationship, and we're going to continue to move the needle forward. So, that is just a very small one that could be dissected in many different ways, but I just wanted to throw that out there about how important that discussion is and how important it is to bring everybody together. And the good organizations I see have been conveners in many different aspects as well in the work that they are doing, right? And so that would probably be what I would want to say to that question.
Okay. I'm thinking about barriers and obstacles to helping people. Sometimes I've seen how the way an organization functions itself can be a barrier. They're hard to communicate with, or I'm drawing a blank there. Are there any other barriers, like I have too many organizations with cute dogs?
Actually, one barrier did come to mind, and I think we did start out maybe in mentioning this very briefly, but I would say is really reaching those military families and veterans that in itself is a barrier. It's hard to reach all 20 to 250 or all 200 to 250,000 transitioning service members, right? But we are doing everything we can, and that is one of the highlights of a lot of my conversations is what is your plan to effectively reach this demographic? How do we empower, how do we incentivize these military veterans and their families to seek out the support and know that it's there? How do we, communicate that this is not a handout, but a hand up, right? This is, these efforts aren't because we feel pity for you or we feel sorry for you, but, this is really a leg up and to help in investing in your long-term career success, your long-term, health and well-being, and your long-term kind of transition back into the civilian world. So I do think that piece is a key barrier that I think a lot of organizations, a lot of stakeholders really think about. How can we do that creatively, and how can we do that?
Right, the VSOs struggle with the same thing. We live in this time of huge communication, but there's so much competition for people's attention.
And Jacey, I think this is an area where, you know, the National Military Family Association is able to help our partners, right? In the sense of, we have this connection with military families, right? We listen to them, we understand what their needs are, they trust us, right? And so when we relay information to them, they know it's authentic, they know that it's vetted, right? That they know that we're partnering with organizations that have their best interests in mind, and they may be organizations that support us in a financial manner or not, but that's one of the things that an organization like the National Military Family Association can do is create that sense of trust, right? Where do I go when I need to have this particular question answered? Where do I go when I need to know issues about licensure certification, or the challenges of childcare, or how do I address my healthcare needs, right, in a pandemic? And so that helps us build and do what Jason was trying to do, is strengthen those families and build that narrative where our purpose as National Military Family Association is to strengthen those families, to make them resilient, to enable them and empower them to become resilient in that manner, and how they can make themselves self-aware and support their purpose. And so that's, you know, I think that's one of the areas of collaboration that's particularly important, is how do we drive that authentic level of engagement for all these different organizations to be able to reach the military community, because I think that's a challenge that many organizations have, is how do you reach them? And so NMFA is, you know, that's one of the reasons, having been around for 50 years, right, is establishing that trusted voice, right, that we listen, we understand, we find the right solutions, then we get back to the families with solutions.
Thank you. We're getting to the end of our time together. As we ended, I'm going to ask each of you to give me the one word you want VSOs to carry forward to mark their 2021 plans. What one word do you want them to keep in mind? James, we're going to start with you because you're quick, man.
Hammer down.
Hammer down, write that down.
Drive forward.
Great word. Jason, what's your word going to be?
I'm going to say optimism. In light of everything that we are going through as a country, as a community, you know, always to remain optimistic and positive in everything that we strive to do and what we will do. So,
excellent. So, hammer down, optimism. Ash, what do you have? Word of the year.
Well, I'm gonna take it. It's 2020, so I'm gonna take two words, and I'm gonna go back to where I started.
Ash is always allowed to take.
And this is for those who are supporting. You know, supporting is make sure you think about the family. So family focused, right? And that's what I'd leave folks with.
And I'm going to pick my word as hope, because my hope for military families is huge, and it is supported so much by VSOs like yours, Ash, and by such fine corporations as PenFed and Boeing. We can't thank you enough. And for all of you who are with us today, this webinar has been recorded, so you'll be able to function to it later. Remember that you can get in touch with Ash about the creative project on the Million Families Learning How to Be Financially Fabulous. There you go. And Jason, for people, you know, somebody in this network has the kind of good hearts that have an idea about how to change that culture into what we all want. So thank you all for being here today. I'm always available on LinkedIn if you want to reach me, Jacey Eckhart. And I think that, Ash, I'll turn it back over to you for the goodbye.
Well, Jacey, thank you so much. And we really appreciate, and a word that we use all the time at the National Military Family Association is gratitude. And we have a tremendous amount of gratitude for you, Jacey, for facilitating this, James and Jason, and for your organizations and your teams. You really make this work for military families, and you have a heart for service, and we're grateful for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
thank you so much. Ashish and Jacey for hosting this phenomenal discussion. And thank you everybody for tuning in. So thank you for having me.